Hello, my friends, and welcome once again to End Times Analysis. I'm Pastor Jeff. Get a cup of coffee, take a seat, and let us reason together. We are discussing Ezekiel 38:12. Yes, I started out at, and I said we're going to get all that in one day. Believe me, I did not do it, and this is the proof. So, Ezekiel 38:12. To take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle. Now let's stop right there for a second. Ask any Texan or any person or any group that has cattle. Cattle need a lot of space. They're big animals. If you think about most of Israel, when people think about Israel, they'll think of sheep, like, David was a shepherd. How many times did Jesus call himself the good shepherd? Or even goats. Cattle? Oh my goodness. Yes, Abraham, when you listen to him and you hear his list of wealth, cattle was included. But when most people think of Middle Eastern, they think of sheep and goats. In order to have cattle, you have to have a lot of arable land, a land with a lot of grass, or they bring in, because it costs a lot to bring in hay and other feedstock. So when you hear cattle, this place has a lot of arable land. Cattle and goods that dwell in the midst of the land. That means they're dwelling in the center part, which we would call the West Bank, what they would call the Judah and Samaria. Uh, this invasion of Gog's coalition was an invasion of a prosperous Israel, which people, I say, were seen dwelling in safety. What has to transpire for Israel to dwell in safety and to be that prosperous? Of course, we know God's blessing is upon them. We talked about that before. They're a high-tech leader. They're a producer of food. We are now finding natural gas deposits, and they might find some other kind of deposits later on. They are now known as a leader in technology and in the economic sector. Let's think about this. Let's be very honest with ourselves. And yes, I'm going into dangerous territory. Israel is surrounded not only by nations that, yes, some of them have peace treaties with them, but still would rather have them not be there. But they're also surrounded by proxy armies. And so remember, dwell in safety. The PLO's there, which has always been kind of determined to destroy Israel. Also, you have the Islamic Jihad. You have Hamas and Hezbollah. What has to come to pass with all these groups, plus the nations, so they can dwell in safety? Could a truce come to pass? I am going to be controversial. So far, I have tried to stay on the conservative. I've tried to stay down the center, but I have to be a little controversial this time. I am going to use Hebrew poetry. Psalms 83. Which talks about, I've not gone over Psalms 83. I've not done it. No, it's controversial to use Hebrew poetry, but this talks about a Children of Lot coalition. Maybe this war happens first, and the near threat is handled. Maybe all these proxy armies and all these nations that are in the neighborhood, which is the near threat, are taken care of in the Psalms 83 coalition, or the Children of Lot coalition. Maybe this war happens first and the near threat is handled. So Israel is living in safety, not necessarily peace, but safety. And of course, when you live in safety and you have natural resources or commodities, and many financiers, if you listen to them, this is not a financial show, but we are going to touch on it. Many financiers are saying that we're going to see the coming of a commodity revolution, where gold, silver, oil, natural gas, lithium, cobalt, all the things to make batteries are going to be pushed to the front. So if you have these things, if you do, and Israel does have commodities, I don't know all the commodities, all the mineral resources they have, but they do have them, then you'll see a nation that can be a lot more prosperous. They are living in safety, not necessarily peace, but we take what we can get. Then the Gog coalition comes in. Now remember, if you take Psalms 83, the near threat has been handled. Israel has overcome once again the near threat enemies. But Now you have an outland enemy. The Gog coalition, if you look where they're at, we're going to talk a little bit about them again, is what you might call the outliers of this. That the Gog coalition comes in to bolster the claims of Islam. Remember, we have Iran, which is called Persia, Sudan, and possibly more. If you can, we're going to talk about Ethiopia and Eritrea a little bit later. Hold on to that, which is called Kush. Put Libya, Gomer, Turkey, Misha, Tubal, could be Central Asia countries, could be Chechnya and Dragestan, which are Muslim areas of Russia, to be the new protectors of the Muslims for access to Dome of the Rock, especially. And we hear rumors about this all the time. I've not heard anything concrete. Yes, I hear some things on YouTube and on the internet and other things. But, there's a lot of stuff that you hear, but is it concrete? Now, can you put your hands on it? Can you look at it and say, all right, this is official policy? Especially if Israel is talking about a rebuilt third temple on the Temple Mount. Now, let's look at the prosperity of Israel. How are the logistic and supply chains affected if an invasion would happen? Look at, if you have a map, or you can pull it up on the computer or even your phone. Look at Israel's location. It is a land bridge between Africa and Asia. And once again, if we're going to see a commodity revolution, a place where the fiat currencies and the SWIFT system somehow takes a little back seat to things that we can hold on to, like say gold, silver, lithium, cobalt, all these things, especially if we're going more and more over to green energy. We're going to talk about that. How is all this going to be affected if a major war happens in the land bridge that connects Africa, which is a lot, Niger, is controlling how much of France's uranium. That's where France and a lot of the European countries have got their uranium in the past. Who is a uranium exporter? If Niger all of a sudden says we're not exporting anymore, guess what? America has a lot of sanctions on Russia. Guess what? One area they do not have sanctions on. Russia is a uranium exporter. Now think about if you're Europe. You're already over the barrel, literally and figuratively, to Russia for oil and natural gas. Now, if all of a sudden the Sahel part of Africa is no longer exporting to you your uranium, and you got to get your uranium from Russia, think about how that goes over in the press. Think about how that goes over in the GDP, gross national product. Think about how all of this goes over. And now you're going to have to go to a place you just put a sanction on and try to get uranium. Okay, try that. Now, how can the neocon West, that is against a multipolar world, let this huge army not just let this huge coalition come together, but form an army and move it? Like I said, you just don't surprise people these days. We have satellites, we have drones, we have all kind of things flying over there. What has got to happen for the neocon West that is against a multipolar world to let this happen? What has to happen to the West to just stand by while one of the most strategic areas of the world is being invaded? My goodness, think about it. This has been the focal spot. This area, the Middle East, has been the focal spot of the Western world, really even before World War II. You look at Britain, you look at France, you look at other places. They'll tell you this has been their focus spot. You ask most strategists, what was one of the main factors of Germany not being able to hold out and losing World War II? Oil. When Rommel was pushing in to Egypt, to Brook, he was saying, I just don't have enough oil. I have enough tanks, I have enough men. I do not have enough fuel. That's why a lot of the last part of the German World War II, and yes, I'm an amateur historian, but the last part of Germany in World War II was a focus of making synthetic fuels, coal gasification. A little bit out of our spot, but I had to throw that in. But could the West be in a death spiral? Could the West be in a death spiral? Could this happen to the West? The powers of U.S. and NATO support for Ukraine. Think of the billions of dollars we are sending to Ukraine. Think about what happened to the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. Billions of dollars was going to Afghanistan. They were in their death throes. They were just pushing the money in. When Gorbachev came in, that was one of the first things he did. I think he said he let them do some offensives in 85. By 86, he was already working on the pullout. Of course, a lot of people think Andropov and even Charenko was starting to do it, thinking about it, but they didn't last long. When Gorbachev was in, he really wasn't part of the main leadership group. So he was able to say, hey, we made a mistake, we're pulling out. But by then, so many billions of rubles had been used on Afghanistan. Could Ukraine, after 20 years of occupation of Afghanistan, after much shorter occupation of Iraq, which also cost us billions of dollars, a worldwide military based empire that is all over trying to contain other countries. Yes, these bases cost money. Put all of these together. Could it finally happen that the United States, NATO, with our NATO allies, go into a death spiral? Especially if there's a de-dollarization. The U.S. would lose the world reserve currency. I know the dollar is considered the best house in a bad neighborhood, but sooner or later, especially if the BRICS are successful with a gold and commodity-backed currency, you could see a lot of defaults in U.S.-backed debts. If a country sees an alternative to the Western financial punishment that could happen, so we can default on these high interest dollar debts, switch to the BRICS currency, which we could not see a significant fallout of our GDP or national product, and the BRICS are developing a financial system with a bank and many others, a rival to the SWIFT system, to rival the G7 nations, and then add in green energy, which will make this area less concerned. If we can get into a green new energy plan, this would make the Mideast not much of a concern. Think about it: the rise of China as a technology and military rival, pulling what's left of the West financial and military capital away from the Middle East, away from Europe, and into the Pacific. Even President Obama, remember President Obama talked about the Pacific pivot, where he was going to take a lot more of our interest away from Europe and the other areas and focus it on the Pacific. And right now, a lot of people are talking about even the Arctic Ocean, which means less resources for the Middle East. A backlash of the Western sanction regime amongst more nations moving away from the West, the United States not wanting to move alone. Remember, the United States had to create the coalition of the willing in Iraq. It was mostly the United States and England, but of course there was other countries involved. But it wasn't like what we had in Afghanistan when we had the NATO. The United States remembers Iraq, the insurgency, the occupation. Now, let's look at this. Russia, Iran, or we call Gog, Russia, Iran, Persia, Libya, Kush control a large portion of the oil and natural gas market now. Plus, look at the strategic Strait of Hormuz and a significant portion of the Red Sea. If you put Kush, which is Upper Sudan, Ethiopia, and oh my God, if Eritrea is part of this, look where the Red Sea is. Look where that little gulf, they come out from the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean. Look where Eritrea is. Look where Yemen is. Look where you have to go. These are choke points. If they could close these choke points, plus a large Gog coalition military near Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, and a further revolt of the Shia in Yemen, if all these events happen, what would happen to the West? Would the West step back and say, we're going to let this one go? If all these are future events, what happens to the natural interests of the West? Okay, are we going to defend Israel, or are we going to heat the homes in the heartland? Are we going to defend Israel, or are we going to make sure our cars have gas? Are we going to defend Israel, or are we going to make sure our factories are running? The West, if it comes down to things, most everybody will say they will go for their survival. What is that old joke of two hunters get caught by a bear? The guy said, "Let's run. We can't outrun the bear." One hunter looks at the other. "I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." What happens when survival happens? You see how people react. 38:12, in the midst of the land. This means the navel of the earth. When you hear about this, they are talking about the midst of the place. Ezekiel 5:5, the land of Israel is the center of the earth as far as God's concerned. And Jerusalem is considered the center of Israel. The temple, when it is built, is considered the center of Jerusalem. And the holy place is the center of the temple. And the ark is the center of the holy place. And many rabbinical scholars say the Temple Mount was the foundation stone of the earth. It is an understatement to say that Jerusalem is the prize of this coalition. If we study conservative rabbinical and conservative Christian writings, they agree on this point. God defines Jerusalem as the basis of the world historical order. Now, thank you so much for staying with me so long. I went a lot longer than I wanted. But if you found this informative, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and until we meet again, Maranatha.